Um, let's talk about the issue of ethical concerns, and it's a real thorny thicket when it comes to artificial intelligence. Like, for example, there's the issue of explainability, and a bank might use an algorithm to decide who gets the loan and who doesn't, and some people might be denied. And the question is, can you explain how that algorithm chose to deny that person a loan? And that's a difficult issue, explainability, but it's only one of several difficult issues. Yeah, how should executives think about ethics in artificial intelligence?
I think first, executive have to recognize that's a potential risk because it happens. Bias introduced either in design or in the data, mostly from the data, I would say. Data like machine learning algorithm models need to be trained with large amount of data. Then if the data is underrepresenting or overrepresenting a certain group, say could be gender group, could be racial group,
Mhm.
then the machine learning algorithm will learn that and embed that information into the model. Then will produce biased results. So it's a well-known problem, and the machine learning community is working very hard trying to address this issue.
Mhm. James, what's your take? I mean, I think there's a big area of concern about ethics and AI. What advice would you give an executive who's worried about that?
Um, it's certainly something to be concerned about. It is, even if you were completely unethical as an executive yourself, you should be concerned about the headline risks, right?
Right.
And any time that you see in the headline of a major mainstream publication the term bias and the term AI, it's going to be problematic for whatever company is being highlighted in an article, right? Even though
Hmm.
I think it's also important to remember that the term, when you hear the term bias, it actually doesn't necessarily have a negative connotation in and of itself in a data
Right.
science context,
Right.
right? Because Yao was hinting at this. You want to maybe bias an algorithm in favor of candidates that are smart, for
Of
example, if you're
course.
looking at a
Right.
job screening application. So it's not that we necessarily want to not have any bias, but we want to understand it and we want to get rid of bias that is kind of untoward. So there are it is kind of we feel like this is a current that is or sorry that a tide that is rising in the world, that there are an increasing number of people who are becoming concerned about this, who are discussing this. I think even within the major companies like Google and Facebook, and I do a lot of interviews just like you about talking with executives about technology and talking about AI ethics in my case. And even within Facebook and Google, I'm told there are people who are really concerned about this and that are working hard to make changes here. It is my concern is a little bit that if we um, if we go too long without addressing it, we can potentially lock in some pretty negative things. Because if we're using biased data from the last 30, 40 years, for example, and who gets a home loan, and that data was biased by racial or economic decisions that
Hmm.
it shouldn't have been biased by now to our eyes,
Right.
we can train an algorithm based on that, and it can lock in some bad decisions for the next period of time. So it's not just the obvious, like racial. This algorithm is clearly racist. It's the more subtle things that I would also be concerned about. Is it making decisions that are based on race to a certain degree that we can't see because we don't have enough transparency into the algorithms that we're doing. So
Hmm.
what we think about in terms of ethics, just to bring this point home, is do you actually have any kind of observability or monitoring capability about what you're actually putting it out to the world? Ya talked about not executives doing AI and then not thinking, how's this thing going to actually work in practice with my people? Another big blind spot is how's this thing just going to work, period, when I put it out into the world? Is it going to
Right.
be taking in new data? Is it going to be, you know, is the data going to be different? Is that going to change what actually the system is putting out? Is it going to need to be retrained? How am I going to know when it's going to be retrained? It's not
Right.
like traditional software that you can just plug in. It does exactly the same thing every time. You know what it is, and now you walk away. You have
Right.
to keep an eye on this stuff. And so the problems of AI ethics, I think, start when people take their eye off the ball and don't have an ability even to put an eye on the ball because there's not these systems in place. That, I think, is one of the core challenges.
Yeah, it's a real issue. I'm actually having a conversation next week with one of the executives at the Rockefeller Foundation. They put out a new report, and they're talking about the need to govern AI. And it seems like one of the difficult issues is there are market forces pushing it forward, and the regulatory frame, people might not be as strong as those market forces, whether it's government, whether it's public interest. I mean, those market forces are really strong. So it's going to be a real issue in the years ahead. Um, let's talk about the years ahead. Let's talk about the future of where you see it going. If we have the same conversation in 2023, 2024, we're not that long from now, really. Yeah, what will we be talking about? What will the AI and ML landscape look like then? What changes do you see happening?
I see mostly, I would say the COVID situation gonna play a big role in that. So right now, people seems like now it's work from home is the new normal. So then all this like remote working and the remote collaboration and all this gonna promote the digital transformation, which has been ongoing. But this time, I would say this is just it's boosted up. Now we're gonna see a lot in terms of the digital transformation and this remote collaboration, new normal, how AI and machine learning gonna promote that. Also on like even just the COVID itself, research on like a new drug, new vaccine discovery, and also how to like track people like infected cases and how to pull information out of like large scale survey data. All these things gonna change. So COVID is a game changer.
You think it's actually accelerating the progress of artificial intelligence at some level because of the need for it?
Right, I think
Yeah,
so.
interesting.
Look
James,
at
what do
what's
you see?
happened with
Yes, please go ahead.
yeah, just look at look at what's happened with unemployment claims in various states being so slow, not because they didn't want to get people the money, but because the computer systems were built on 30, 40-year-old technology, right? Imagine
Right.
what, I mean, we can look at that and say, oh, that could be automated. Of course, it's a long digital transformation, as we've been talking about. It's not just as simple as creating an algorithm, but all kinds of paperwork, all kinds of document processing, all the things that have been that are slowing companies down should accelerate potentially because of the crushing need to do that I think COVID in some cases has laid bare. The other thing I was thinking when you said, hey, if we had this conversation in 3 or 4 years, I was thinking, man, with the amount of money that Zoom has now, this is going to be an incredible conversation. We're going to have 3D avatars,
Right,
incredible
right.
realistic backgrounds. It's going to be
I'm,
amazing.
I'm waiting for like the scent technology so I can be cooking a stew and you can smell my stew over the.
Smell-o-vision.
Yeah,
Smell.
smell-o-vision is coming
Yeah.
next. I'm waiting for that.
Yeah. But I mean, but it's only and Zoom is a great example of kind of a darling of this. But I think
Right.
just like with any crisis, any recession, which unfortunately it seems like we're in, there's opportunity for accelerants in the technological area, and I think certainly from what we've seen in our company and from the people that I talk to, it certainly seems like that's going to happen.
Right. Yeah, it seems basically a given. Yeah, James, I want to thank you very much for sharing your expertise. It was a lot of good stuff. I definitely learned something. I will send you the link when the video is all put together in the podcast. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise today.
Right. Thanks for having us here.
All righty. Take care.
Yeah, thanks, James. Really enjoyed it.